up there. After that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Okay, we'll do a roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Here.
Councilor Calorio?
Here.
Councilor King?
Here.
Councilor Merrill Carlson? Councilor Merrill Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Here.
Councilor Rose?
Here.
Councilor Rosen?
Here.
Councilor Russell?
Here.
Councilor Toomey?
Here.
Councilor Wally?
Here.
And Mr. Mayor.
Here. Okay. If you're not speaking, just remind people to mute themselves and not get the background noise. Okay, so we did a roll call. So items that are going to be held tonight was Resolution 12B. It's going to be held. Just want the public to know that. And also, let's go to the approval of the minutes. 5A, the City Council of the City of Worcester hereby approves the minutes of the City Council meeting on January 26, 2021. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, public participation. Person may not no more than 2 minutes. AJ, how many people do we have? Can you tell?
Mr. Mayor is going to give me a hand in the public participation for tonight's meeting. So right now, we have about 11 folks on the line. So
Okay.
If you'd like to begin, we can start with the call leaders.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to mute 2 calling users. If you can please state your name and city of residence.
Hello, am I that first caller?
Yes. Identify your name and city of residence.
Sure. This is Elaine Baskin. I'm Worcester, Massachusetts, and I'm calling about the Weatherall information. I think that the Weatherall family, Lincoln family, several families have been very instrumental in making Worcester the city as it is. The Weatherall family in particular donated or sold to the city at a very minimal cost quite a bit of land that's now become part of Newton Square area. And I think it would be appropriate to have a little memorial there of some kind. I think we have memorials on many of the corners, well, the small memorials for service people. And it's just there. It's a credit to them. It's looking at that memorial, it may be from World War I, we don't know who they are, but still, I think the Weatherall family, certainly for all they have done for the city, certainly deserve a memorial. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I muted 2 more calling users. If you can please state your name and city of residence. Hearing none, I will move to unmute a few more calling users. If you can please state your name and city of residence if you're on the phone line.
Suzanne Burke. Johnson.
Okay, we have 2 people there. Mr. Clark?
So we have Suzanne Burks and then Eva Johnson. So we'll start with Suzanne Burks.
Your name, city of residence, item number?
Good evening, everyone. I'm talking about 2 issues tonight. Item 11J. I'm calling up to support the Doherty study being shared with the City Council. That area has really needed scrutiny for a tremendous amount of time. There have been no improvements really since 1960. It's kind of a 6-way intersection with 4 crosswalks, and there's a tremendous amount of traffic that goes through there, and with the potential for Doherty being built, I can only imagine that it's going to get more difficult, more congested. So I'm glad that that information is going to be shared so that the City Council can look at it.
Okay.
My next item is 11I, and just want to say this: the Worcester Art Museum, the Mass Department of Early Education, the Edward Street Daycare, the Worcester Children's Friends Society, which was founded in 1840, the Ecotarium, Seven Hills Foundation, and WPI. What do all these agencies and institutions have in common? They are all long-term beneficiaries of the existing Hester Newton Wetherell Trust. Hester was also the largest contributor of the Worcester Society of Antiquity, which was founded in 1875, which would eventually be renamed as the Worcester Historical Museum. She was a progressive woman, a humanitarian ahead of her time. Her altruism led to her investment in the city and the many agencies who cared for the vulnerable. She was a leader in social reform and established the Children's Friends Society in 1840 and left her private residence as an asset to that agency. As a lover of the arts, she appreciated all forms of education and focused on the needs of children. As the daughter of Rejoice Newton, owner of Newton Hill Park, she knew the value of land and the environment, now often referred to as green space. Hester bequeathed her ownership of Wetherell Estates, also known as Peat Meadow, to the city with the stipulation that it remain a park, not a synthetic turf field. I support the request before the council tonight to acknowledge the generosity of the Hester Newton Wetherell family. A memorial erected at the Wetherell Park in her name would honor her philanthropy to the citizens of Worcester. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next one, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've unmuted two more calls. I believe Ava Johnson, if I heard correctly.
Yep, Eva Johnson from Paxton, Massachusetts. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much for everything you all do. I'm calling in to support the chairman's orders number 10N through 10Q for outreach to key community groups and the provision of additional information regarding the implementation of ShotSpotter Connect. Just here to support that. Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've unmuted two more calling users. If you're on the phone line, if you can please state your name and city of residence. Okay, anyone on the phone, if you can please state your name and city of residence. There's no one on the phone, Mr. Chairman, and we're going to move on to one more calling user. If you can please state your name and city of residence. Okay. Right, hearing none, we're going to move on to folks on devices. Fred Taylor is on the line. Fred, I'm going to unmute you now.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I just want to speak on recess to executive session, item number 7A. The City Council convened an executive session to discuss the litigation strategies with respect to the suit between Spencer Tatum and Andrew Harris. I support that, and I just hope that we can do something to come to a solution to this. It's been 26 years. It's long overdue. I'd like to see a conclusion to this. I'd also like to speak on 12C. Thank you all for recognizing Black History Month, and we would appreciate if you called on the public officials to recognize Black History Month through ceremonies and activities and other programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Monica Sager. I'm going to unmute Monica now.
I'm here with the media.
Okay. The next speaker is Trulove Davies. I've unmuted Trulove now. Okay.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Trulove Davis. I live in Worcester, Massachusetts. I am going to talk about the items on 11K, 11L, and 12V. This is in respect of the Africans COVID-19 vaccination for the Africans in Worcester County. We have a place in 1023 Main Street in Worcester. It is a very large, we have a very large hall where we could accommodate the vaccination center for mainly or mostly Africans and African Americans to be vaccinated. We have good facilities there. We have parking. So we want the city to consider opening a site at 1023 Main Street, Worcester, former American Legion. So we are asking that the city should consider the African Americans here, especially the people of African descent. We want to use that platform to reach out to the Africans to do the vaccination.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
That's it. We will appreciate it because we have another association under the platform, the MOAD Association, which is another African association platform where the group of, in fact, yesterday they had, on Sunday, they had education for the Africans, the effect of the COVID vaccinations, and also inviting people to come and do the vaccination. If we use that center as a platform, it would enhance a lot of people to come out to do the vaccination there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, we have Yanni DeRocher on the line. I'm going to mute Yanni now.
Just listening.
Okay.
So I've gone through all the folks on the electronic devices.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everybody for participating, and now we're going to 7A. We are going to hold that to the end of the meeting, so we'll go into executive session. I'll read this at the end of the meeting and come back to it. Public hearings. The motion is to put the hearing for National Grid location, final location on Ideal Road. Motion is to open the hearing. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman, I think Council Toomey has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Council Toomey.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself.
Okay.
So motion to recuse.
Council Toomey has recused herself from 8A. Okay. Roll call.
Council Bergman?
Yes.
Council Calorio? Council Calorio?
Yes.
Council King?
Yes.
Council Member Carlson?
Yes.
Council Rivera?
Yes.
Council Rose?
Yes.
Council Rosen?
Yes.
Council Russell?
Yes.
Council Toomey recused herself. Council Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Anybody opposed to this item on Ideal Road? Anybody opposed here? Seeing nobody is opposed, motion is to close the hearing and also to adopt the roll call.
Council Bergman?
Yes.
Council Calorio?
Yes.
Council King?
Yes.
Council Member Carlson?
Yes.
Council Rivera?
Yes.
Council Rose? Council Rosen?
Yes.
Council Russell?
Yes.
Council Toomey recused herself. Council Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. We have petitions. May speak for no more than 3 minutes. We have 9A to 9C. We're going to refer to public.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Someone just contacted me that they were on the line and they couldn't get through, or they're trying to say hello, but no one could hear them.
Okay, well, are they still on the line?
Yeah, they said they're listening, but the line was never open to them.
Nico, do you just want to open up the lines again?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, I can go back to the folks on the line. Try to, Councilor Rivera, do you have the name of the person? Maybe we can state the name and we can identify him that way.
Yes, Charles Lester.
Mr. Lester, are you on the line? Mr. Lester, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
I'll go ahead, Charles. We hear you now.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Lester. Calling indoor farming. Recently started a new nonprofit in the city called Together We Eat, where we teach the youth hydroponic farming as well as a STEM program, and we have an intergenerational program as well. We've collaborated with the Worcester Boys and Girls Club as well as the YWCA, and we just want to talk about some of the benefits we have with hydroponic farming. We use 70% less water than a traditional farmer. With the only having 3% fresh water, you know, that's we're preserving water in that sense, as well as with the STEM program, we're teaching our youth how to have a little empathy, as well as giving back to the community. Everything that we grow, we donate 100% back into the community.
All set?
All set.
Okay, thanks, Charles. Okay. You're welcome. Okay, thank you, Councilor Rivera. Okay, so we are going to go on. We're going to do petitions. We have 9A to 9C, which are referred to public works. We have 9D to 9B, which are referred to traffic and parking.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson? Councilmember Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Just ask everybody to mute themselves if I'm getting some feedback. Councilor Bergman wants to recuse himself from 9H. He is recused. And we ask the motion is to set a hearing for February 23rd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. for a condo location on Highland Street from Charter Communications. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman has recused himself. Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, we have chairman's orders, 10A to 10S. We're going to adopt those on a roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio? Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey? Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Next on is request the mayor to consider implementing a Worcester Fire Cadet program with the Worcester Fire Department would use to increase the diversity of future recruit classes to better reflect Worcester demographics by enlisting Worcester residents to serve on fire cadets while performing civilian duties within the department. Future line recruits classes would have a large number of spots reserved for individuals who complete the Fire Cadet program. Further, should such a program be proposed, request the associate draft language for home rule petition, which is required to create such a program. Councilor Wally and Rose. Councilor Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This body frequently talks about the Mr. Mayor, this body frequently talks about the desire to have our city workforce mirror the demographics of city residents, and I think a fire cadet program could be a tool to help us reach that goal. Boston recently implemented a similar program to meet the same purpose. In Boston, residents between the ages of 18 and 25 are eligible to join their cadet program. And for 2 years, they perform civilian duties and gain exposure to the role of a firefighter. And program graduates who decide to take the exam to become a firefighter receive some type of preferential treatment on that exam. And furthermore, it would need a home rule petition if we move forward on such a program because of civil service laws. I think if we were to go forward, it would be important to make sure that we have a program that is right for Worcester. Just because a program is right for Boston doesn't necessarily mean it should be replicated in Worcester. And I think it would be important to certainly get the feedback and the input of the fire chief and his deputies to make sure such a program is practical in Worcester. And certainly there are budget implications. And in addition, I know that there's been talk of civil service reform, which would have positive impacts for the city of Worcester. But I think a program such as what they're running in Boston certainly should be looked at in Worcester. And I think it does have merit. And so I think it would behoove ourselves to ask the manager to have further exploration on this idea and have discussions with the fire chief. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Sarai. Mr. Chairman, this is Sarai. Can I speak?
Council Rose is the maker of the item, so he is second.
Mr. Chairman? Okay.
Can you hear me, Council?
Yeah, I couldn't.
Yeah, you broke up on
Okay. So it's going to be Council Rose, King, and Rivera.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've happily signed on to this order. Councilor Rivera and I had explored something along these lines with the Worcester Police Department in the past. I think that anything that we can do to encourage, partnership or collaboration or jumping into volunteering as part of our public safety departments is a good thing. And I think anything that we can do to replicate the diversity of the city in these departments is great as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Wally, for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to sign on this as well. Appreciate Councilor Wally's order. Would also reiterate that, there's been some discussions regarding all public safety departments having a cadet program or getting theirs back up and running to a certain degree. And as mentioned by Councilor Rose, that's been discussed over the years, really kind of reinvigorating that. So I'd also like to see that explored with the police department as well, because diversity matters. In addition to that, I just want to make sure if we could get, a report as well in regards to this in terms of feasibility as we move forward. I really think that there's something to say for us really pushing these issues forward and making sure that we have, a reference point as it relates to our expectations for these sorts of things coming to fruition. There's a lot of things on the plate of the administration, and we just want to make sure that, we're moving forward all this. And also, if there's any sort of concerns as it relates to budgetary matters, that we also be afforded that. But I think we can do this without any major cost. Appreciate the leadership on this and appreciate the order.
Okay, thank you, Councilor King. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate Councilor Wally. He did reach out and call me. We've just playing phone tag. And I was supposed to be signed on to this order. So this has been something I've been working on for a few years now. I had actually met not only I've had orders regarding the police academy, but we were talking about, because the fire department had a diversity person in charge as well, and we had been meeting with the city chief diversity officer, and the goal was taking a look at starting implementing with the police cadet program, which I think hopefully this year we will be seeing something. I'm speaking in faith as the city manager is present. We have put in a lot of work, and I think we're close to having that. And then hopefully taking a look at what's been done, and then taking it a step further and going into the fire department. That's always been kind of the goal. Part of the goal of this is actually taking it a step further, as I've had orders in the past, is where we create kind of a 3-tier program, not just cadet, but eventually something that we could have in the middle and high school. For lack of a better way of describing it, something similar to like ROTC. And there's other programs like it within other municipalities, and that's something we're also exploring. Last year, we had it all planned out. Unfortunately, budgetary constraints did not allow us to roll it out. But I believe this year, we're hoping that we could actually have something move forward, and then our goal was to continue the conversation with fire, because it's something that we desperately need to diversify. So I appreciate Councilor Wally also bringing this up. It just shows that we are collectively really working together to make sure that our departments reflect our city, and I'm really appreciative of that.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Are you all set, Council? Okay, thank you, Councilor Rivera. So we're going to send that to the manager as amended by Councilor King for the feasibility and the budget issues.
Mr. Mayor, I have a...
Oh, Councilor Corio, I'm sorry. I didn't see
Okay, thank you. Just quickly, if possible, could we get a report of the breakdown on how diverse our fire department is, and as it reflects on how diverse our community is over the last 5 years. So I would like the report to reflect how many of each category of men and women we have in the different categories, and brown and black, Hispanic, the different categories, and then how it reflects to our community. So if we have 17% or 18% black and brown people in our community, we add an 18 or 19% diverse fire department. If that would help out to really look at where we have to be at, so we can have that true reflection of our community. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. So we will send it to the manager as amended from Councilor King, Rivera, and Corio. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request the manager provide council with a status update concerning the Route 20 sewer project with a projected completion date. Full date for sewage connection, completion from all pumping stations, the Upper Blackstone Valley sewage treatment plant. Do you want to go into 11B and C together, or do you want to?
No, that's fine.
Okay. 11C, request the manager provide council with a report concerning the status of the marketing plan for development of Route 20. And also request the manager conduct a review of the current zoning along Route 20 corridor to identify any potential roadblocks to the highest and best uses of the development. Councilor Toomey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, you and I have worked on this for a very long time. As I actually live over near here, I see a lot of the development that's happening right next door in Shrewsbury, where there's going to be some 40B housing, some supermarkets and retail that's going in a mall right down the street. I know that they're either have or are connecting to the Route 20 sewerage as well. And knowing that there's a lot more to go, I'd like to get a listing of what the dates are as requested, and especially for the pumping stations all the way through to the sewage treatment plant. Also, what's of great concern for me, there's a lot of property over here that's for sale, that's not necessarily being used for highest and best use. And so we certainly, after having spent all that money on this very well-deserved project, want to make sure that we're doing something to market this area. I know, was it last year or a year and a half ago, we were talking about possibly Amazon coming at that area, but so we've got some of that work already done. I'd like to see something really comprehensive move forward. And then lastly, ensuring that we eliminate any roadblocks to potential future development.
Thank you, Councilor Russell.
Mr. Chairman, I like to sign on to the second and third item there, C and D, if I may. And I would just suggest that, first of all, I just, in the art of disclosure, there's a lot of people named Russell who own a lot of property on Route 20, and I'm not one of them. But the reality is that when the Amazon project came along, or the proposal for the Amazon project, I was very disappointed that myself as the district councilor and the neighbors and the residential areas that surround the Route 20 area, as well as even the business owners, property owners. I mean, I had calls the day after the Amazon thing came out, people that own property where there was arrows pointing towards it in a Telegram and Gazette newspaper article. So if this is going to happen, and it should happen because Route 20 is prime for development, especially with the sewer project there, it needs to be a conversation, a community conversation, Mr. Chairman, one that includes the people that actually own some of the properties in the Route 20 corridor, includes the people that live in the vicinity of that area, and includes the elected representatives who represent that area, whom all of the councilors, for that matter, all the large councilors represent them. But I want to make sure that myself and Representative Keefe and others that are on the ground close on neighborhood issues are in the loop on this and part of the conversation. I think maybe the manager should consider putting together an ad hoc committee. Mr. Chairman, I remember you put together a committee a long time ago about with Route 20. Maybe it's something that we should look at trying to revive that. But whatever it is, we need to just get as many folks as we can in the conversation.
Yeah, maybe we can use the Public Works Committee for that. Okay. Okay, who will help with? Council King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to sign on to 11C and 11D. Also, just had a question to the administration. Has there been any sort of marketing plan through the chair in regards to Route 20? Perhaps that's been ongoing.
Mr. Manager?
No, there hasn't been a formal marketing plan for Route 20.
Okay, thank you. And, I agree. I support Councilor Russell's idea of an ad hoc committee or something of that nature forward. And I want to thank Councilor Toomey for these items. And I'd like to sign on. Thank you.
Okay. Very all set then. We'll send that to the manager as intended. All three of those items, roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Next item from Councilor Rivera, requesting manager provide council to report concerning the feasibility, including a cost estimate of recreation Worcester working with Together We Eat, a youth hydroponic farming program to facilitate bringing the location to appropriate city schools and for neighborhood organizations as a way to teach the city's youth nutrition education as well as the STEM with the potential for business and skill development. Project would also address food insecurities and sustainability. Rivera.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just something I learned, and I believe that also Councilor King's mentioned this in the past as well. It's a project that is, I think Mr. Luster spoke on it, And there's some partnerships already coming on board, the Y and the Boys and Girls Club. And what this does is really supports indoor growing. As we're talking about food insecurities, we've been having so much conversations about food insecurities. And I think it's one of those things that COVID highlighted. We can't think about food insecurities without really having a further or simultaneous conversation about food sustainability. And again, I want to highlight some of the work that you did, Mr. Chairman. We got a chance to do together on urban agriculture and why that was so important. And that's a huge part of food sustainability. And this program would take a look at doing exactly that, would help in food insecurity, food sustainability. It would really work with our CHIP regarding healthy eating. It would work, in supporting our STEM. It would work on looking at really going along with our urban agricultural ordinance and even teaching on business. It's all around really well. So I'm just requesting if the city manager can have our Rec Worcester department maybe meet with them and see if it's something we can, what it would cost and what would be the feasibility to bring this in. I'd love to see something like this, like in South Worcester, in Canterbury. As we know, the community farm that was implemented within the park has done extremely well there, and would love to see something like that. So we'd just love to have the city manager maybe meet with the people of this organization, the Together We Eat, and maybe with the people from Rec Worcester to see how we could implement this as one of our programs moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor King, followed by Councilor Rose.
Yes, I'd like to sign on to this as well. And perhaps, mention item 22F that we spoke about last week. I don't know if we can take it together or not, so we don't have to, we don't need to vote on that again, I guess. So, I certainly appreciate this. We talked about this last week. We were talking about a lot of the challenges. I want to remind folks that this sort of farming is 3 times as fast as traditional farmers with respect to how they produce their crops and what have you. And this is an intergenerational program. And, you think about places like the senior center, you think about places where we can connect youth to our elderly. I certainly think that we should do some expansion that way, and try to have the folks over there at the senior center reach out to Together We Eat and some of the other elderly housing facilities. I think this is a great start and a great beginning. I know they have a very diverse board over at Together We Eat, and that's exactly what we're looking for these days and times is a diversified approach to the many challenges that we have as a city. So happy to sign on to this. Appreciate Councilor Rivera's item, and look forward to seeing how the administration can interface throughout in an intergenerational way. Thank you.
Councilor King, Councilor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been over the topic of insecurity in this council in the past several weeks. There was a report that just came out from the administration highlighting a lot of the different efforts and things that people are doing. And I think that this just adds to that effort in a very educational and creative way, and could potentially be a good foundation for people all throughout the city. I know Councilor Rivera referenced some areas, but even in North Worcester, there are a lot of people who are really sort of excited the opportunity to do some more and diversifying all that we can do to support the efforts of others and mitigating the food insecurity happening in the city. So I appreciate Councilor Rivera putting this on. Happy to sign on, and I'm also happy to take part in whatever comes our way as it relates to helping to address this issue and mitigate this problem, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Corio, followed by Rosa.
Thank you. I want to just say that this is a very interesting item. I really like it, and I'd like to sign on to this. Whenever we can teach our kids these skills, I think it's extremely important. And this is one way, and it's a new, innovative way to talk about food insecurity. One of the things that, as I was sitting here and I was reading the item and people were talking, I was thinking about, I don't want to date myself, but when I was in junior high, we had cooking classes, and I have to tell you, it's when I first learned how to make, baked macaroni and cheese. We learned a lot of things. I would bring it home. I would cook it for my family. Not that they weren't good cooks; they were good cooks, but it also made me feel like I can contribute to my family and bring a skill forward. So I think this was very interesting, and I think it was Councilor Rivera that mentioned the intergenerational aspect of it, which I think is extremely important on this item, because our youth can then bring back some of these skills and to teach their parents or their grandparents, and this can be something that can really help some of our families in the city of Worcester. And I'm very excited to see how this plan works out, because I'm not as knowledgeable about hydroponic farming, and I'd like to learn more. So thank you, Councilor Rivera, for bringing this item forward.
Thank you, Councilor Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to sign on to this excellent order dealing with hydroponic farming. I did talk to Charles Lust, who spoke earlier in our meeting, and he mentioned that he's going to be working with Girls Inc. At Camp Kennywood, but especially on Providence Street, right across from the senior center. I know a couple of my colleagues have already mentioned the senior center, but I did talk to a few of my colleagues on the board of the Friends of the Worcester Senior Center, and we think it's a great chance to work with the children, youth across the street at Girls Inc., to have the seniors work with them. So we want to start a unique intergenerational program, and we think hydroponic farming would be great for the adults and for the kids, and to get the two generations involved. So today, some of the senior citizens can understand our youth, and many of our youth will understand our senior citizens. I think it's a very good match, and this is the program that's going to do that. So besides the farming part, which I'm very interested in, and the food production that I'm very, very interested in, just the fact that we can get some folks from the senior center maybe going across the street and working with some of our youth, to me, seems to be so valuable for the senior citizens and to those children and those youth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Kate Toohey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to sign on to this as well. I have been taking some efforts myself to try to grow my own vegetables during the summer, although I'm not quite up to the hydroponic level. One of the things that I did work on when I was working at the alternative school was educating young people about gardening and sustainable gardening, but also how to do it in an urban setting. And I think that that's incredibly important. I know that the hydroponic farming, actually you can get much more in square footage, because you can go up and much easier. You don't need to have actual soil. So that's great. But there's also other ways to engage young people. How do you grow stuff at home? How can you do that and if you live in a 3-decker or an apartment building? And so I think it's really important that that programs like this continue, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll send that to the manager.
Mr. Mayor, Matt, I would like to sign on too.
Sure. Okay. Everybody wants to sign on, so is amended to sign on. Everybody, roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. 11F. Request national, I'm sorry, 11F, yep. Request national and state data reveals that national and state data reveals that Black and Hispanic people are receiving the fewer COVID-19 inoculations than their white counterparts, despite getting sick and dying at much higher rates. Request City Manager inform City Council what Worcester is doing and must do to fairly distribute limited supply of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines to communities of color. Do you guys, okay, Councilor Rosen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you want to take
Yeah, I was thinking that.
11K and 11L, which are sponsored by Councilor Rivera, if you want to take them, which are all three are similar. So if you want to have one big discussion.
I agree. I think, yeah, that's good. That's a good idea.
Okay, we can do that. Requesting the mayor work with UMass Memorial and the city's Equity Task Force to provide City Council with an updated presentation relative to the data collected relative how the city's diverse community has been adversely impacted by COVID-19. Per request, City Manager include in such presentation information as how said data collected by UMass Memorial Equity Task Force will be used to guide the city vaccination process.
Mr. Chairman, can we take 12B as well with this?
12B was going to be held by.
Who held it?
Yes. What's that? Council Berg was asked to hold for 1 week. So.
All right, I'm going to comment on that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
But 12, we are on 11L, request City Manager meet representatives from Leon Latino Empowerment Organization Network and Black Families Together to discuss the research done by the City and State Equity Task Force losses during the COVID-19 pandemic relative to the disproportionate effect of the virus on communities of color be used to guide the city in the vaccination process. Okay, so Councilor Rosen, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
By Rivera and King. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For several months now, the Worcester City Council at various meetings, we've had a few discussions mainly about how people of color seem to have been more susceptible to COVID-19 and, not only testing positive, but a lot worse than that, getting very sick, winding up in the hospital, and even dying disproportionately. And we went through a lot of reasons, I remember months ago, why that was happening. And that's been discussed not only locally, of course, but across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and throughout the country. And a lot of reasons why. I'm not going to go through all the reasons now. But these three items here deal more with vaccination, the process. You would expect that since people of color might be getting sicker and winding up in the hospital more than their white counterparts and even passing away, that they might, be more willing to get the COVID vaccines, which we've had for now a few months. And there's a whole distribution issue and production issue. We know that. But what we're finding across the country is that a lot of people of color, for various reasons, are not lining up and deciding that they should get the vaccine. They're reluctant. They're reluctant for several reasons. Many don't even have their personal care physicians. Many work in jobs and industries that they might be more susceptible to COVID, and for some reason, maybe they are against the vaccine. Many, just don't trust medical doctors and healthcare workers. It goes back decades, people of color, having been involved in different experimentation in the health and medical field, going back to, even Tuskegee and so on. So there's a lot of issues. I touched on a couple. There's, we could probably, name a dozen other issues why they lack the trust in the system, and they fear the system, and they don't realize that probably the best thing is to get the vaccine. I would suggest that to everyone. Get the vaccine. I know a few people say, I'd never get the vaccine, and we have that discussion. I see no reason not to get the vaccine. But in any case, it concerns me. We had this discussion a week or so ago at the Public Health Committee. Councilor Rivera, the chair, and Councilor Russell and I, members of that committee. And it was a good discussion. And we learned a lot. I learned a lot, especially. I know Councilor Rivera has been involved in this issue for quite a while. And a lot of good people and agencies in Worcester have been involved, from our administration, the city manager, the administration, our public health department has been involved in this. Certainly Worcester Together has been involved. Nurses, across the whole city, St. V's and UMass Medical, just so many people have been involved. Various agencies, various individuals, various doctors, and so on. And they've all been concerned about this. I hadn't heard as much about it. I heard it more nationally on the news. Hadn't heard as much about it locally in Worcester until that public health meeting a week or so ago when a representative from UMass made an excellent presentation and showed the local figures. I had heard figures nationally on television, but these were the first local figures I heard. And I know some of my colleagues in the council have been aware of this for months, and especially the chair of the Public Health Department, the Public Health Committee, Councilor Rivera, has been active in the community trying to deal with this issue, as seen by the 2 orders that she filed independently of mine. But I think it's something that we all can agree on, that if people of color are getting sicker more frequently, disproportionately, a higher percentage, then it's important that we, as elected officials, appointed officials, people in the medical field, residents of our community, that we somehow encourage them to get the vaccine when and if it's available, that we encourage them. I don't know exactly how we do that, and I know there's committees out there that are working on that, but it's so important for this city council to set the example and let people know throughout the community the shot is good. Not 100% effective, but you know what? No shot, getting no shot, that's 0% effective. So I would take 80, I would take 90%. The Johnson & Johnson shot seems to be on the way at 1 shot, and that's good. That's good news. May not be quite as effective as the other 2 shots, but it's more effective again than having no vaccine. Not only do we have an issue again with people of color, having to be educated and encouraged to get the shot, but don't forget, for most of them, it will be 2 vaccines, 2 shots. We have to worry about that. A lot of people will get the first and maybe they get a sore arm, or maybe they get a fever, or maybe they don't feel good for a day or 2, and that might keep them away from the second shot. So we have to encourage, everyone to get the second shot. But my concern here on this order is a very sincere and legitimate concern that people of color need to get these shots. And whatever we can do in this community, I say to the city manager, I say to my colleagues, I say to Dr. Castile, the whole public health department, whatever this community can do to make sure that they get these vaccines, that they trust the city, they trust us, they get the vaccines, and hopefully after the first vaccine and the second, then that will cut down the incidence that we're seeing for various reasons why people of color are getting sicker, winding up in the hospital at a greater rate, and even dying. So that's my plea to my colleagues in the council. Again, it's a sincere plea. I just want to help people in the community out. I appreciate Councilor Rivera's leadership on this. I learned a lot at the last Public Health Committee, and whatever we can do to help and whatever needs to be done, I'll certainly be there, and I know, all 10 of my colleagues will be there also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You were in your second 5 minutes there, but good job.
Thank you.
We're going to go with Councilor Rivera, followed by Councilor King.
I think Councilor Rosen said things very well to kind of sum up the meeting. I think one of the things I'd like to add is and I know that I spoke to you, Mr. Chairman, I called you. I really feel like it would be really important. And this, one of my first items was inspired by Councilor Russell, who's also in my committee, just stating it would be great to be able to bring that information to council so all the council can have maybe a 30-minute presentation, and it would be great maybe we could do that next week, because I think every community is different. And I think when you see these numbers, one of the reasons we created an equity task force was to make sure that we were implementing, that we were adequately dealing with the crisis of COVID in an equitable way and not repeating history, right? A very ugly and difficult history, especially among communities of color and poor white as well. Which is really important, people who are poor regardless of your race. And so I think that's going to be something that's really important for us to be able to have that information. So I would request that maybe next week we could have that information so everyone can see that.
So let's see what the agendas are for next week or the week after. Is that okay, Councilor?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And then the only thing is that I don't want to repeat what Councilor Rosen said because he stated it really well. Is the Equity Task Force isn't just about we're just purposely looking at communities of color. We saw that trend and that's what's happening. What we need to do is look at, if we created data and we put in there was so much work that went in UMass, and you'll see the amount of work that went in when you see this presentation, is that can we actually utilize the data to do this vaccine rollout, to make sure that we are, regardless of whether you're older, younger, red, blue, black, whatever you are. But according to what this data is showing us is there's not only just people being infected, but people being hospitalized and dying. I mean, just this last week, I have a family member who passed away at, in her 50s of COVID complications. They are being hospitalized younger. So the other important is 11L is if we could actually include organizations like Leon and Black Families Together who have been taking a look at this and who have been very actively involved in this issue regarding equity in order to assist, because one of the things that keeps coming up as I'm in meetings is to say we don't know what the plan is. We don't know what the plan is regarding and I think this is also that there's a lot of work, there's a lot of waiting as to what the state is saying. But what we're seeing is that there's some municipalities that are taking it out of the state and are doing what they need to do for their community. And so I would ask that sooner rather than later, the administration meet with Leon and Black Families Together to be able to look at this data that has been collected so we could actually do it right this time. We can get it right this time to say we're actually going to follow the data to do this vaccine rollout to the best of our ability. So those are my 2 cents on the matter. Thank you.
Okay, so we can, depending on the manager's calendar, he might have a large calendar next week, so we can put it off maybe either next, depending on the manager's calendar, so it doesn't get lost and we can do it the week after, okay?
With the urgency of the vaccine rollout, the sooner the better. I was trying to get it on this calendar, and I just feel like it's really important for this council to have this information as soon as possible.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we have Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to sign on all of these and also thank the Councilor Rosen and Councilor Rivera and the members of the Public Health Committee for all the work they've done in the administration, Dr. Matty Castile, and so many more folks. That being said, I do want to remember that we had a call in today from a gentleman named True Love Davies, and he's also associated, he said, with the Massachusetts Organization of African Descendants. I'd like to make a motion that we reach out to that group as well. In regards to all this, they've had a convening and a session where they've done some of this work with the African population. I appreciate the Leon and the Black Families Together outreach. I was able to participate in 2 separate, over an hour-long sessions with multiple doctors of color, Dr. Castile and others on 2 separate occasions with Black Families Together, and they recorded both of those with respect to concerns in the Black community, the lack of trust in the Black community due to the history that has occurred. And those are resources perhaps that we could get access to. And I was happy to participate in those. So I'd like to include that as well. Councilor Rivera mentioned the state. We don't work in a vacuum here in the municipality. We're dependent upon the state and the federal government for so much. And that's the reason I put on the item, I think it's 12B, regarding vaccinations. It's an act effectuating equity. And I'm not quite sure why this was held. Hopefully that person will reconsider that and perhaps withdraw it. But this is a time-sensitive matter. This is an item where they're looking for how to eliminate the disparities in the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. And in addition to that, they're looking to really get the government rolling on this by February 12th. February 12th, Mr. Chairman. We don't have time to really hold on this. And this is a request to immediately appoint a designee or director of COVID-19 vaccination equity and outreach, who will be a new member of the leadership and the Executive Office of Health and Human Services and the COVID-19 Command Center, and will report directly to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. It also specifically talks about Worcester. It directly states, and I shared all this information with my colleagues, that that they will try to get 2 mobile vaccination sites to the communities of Central Mass with the highest % positivity rate in the region, and that those vaccination vehicles will include a medical assistant, patient services, coordinators, 2 community health workers, all who have direct experience in that municipality. This is a time-sensitive matter, as is the report that was requested by my colleague. This is extremely, extremely important. The state legislation that we're trying to endorse, we have to remember, we have a chairman of public health and Representative John Mahoney. He is the chair. We need to use our legislative resources. We also have Representative LaBeouf that has already signed on. Senator Chandler has signed on. Jim O'Day has been vocal about vaccine rollout and these issues. Representative Keith has been very outspoken about this. Representative Donahue. This is simply a resolution to let those folks know that we are in support and we want them to move forward with regards to effectuating equity in COVID-19. You know, I think when we think about these issues, the equity plan and the detailed plans are important. And this particular plan also recognizes that Black people only make up in Massachusetts 2.6% of vaccine recipients so far per the DPH. Latino people only make up for 3.3% of vaccine recipients so far for DPH. You know, it's possible that there's some specificity for Worcester here, particularly if more vaccination sites are available to those in surrounding areas, Western Mass. We have a mega site that's opening, but as we move forward, perhaps with people like True Love Davies of Nigerian descent, perhaps when we get to a stage 3, we're already prepared for this sort of thing. This sort of stuff cannot wait now. You know, I want to also point out that part of this bill that's being held is about also mobilizing the National Guard to staff phone banks right here in our city. I really hope that my colleague withdraws his motion to hold this matter. This goes right along lines of everything we're talking about. This is time sensitive. You know, and if they're talking about a vehicle mobile vaccination sites for each gateway city in Mass, we should be pushing our legislators. We should be pushing the State House on this stuff. And it's all doable. It's all about expanding the state stop and spread free testing programs. We got to do this. We really should be supporting this. And if it's held, that's fine. I'll certainly create a letter and have folks sign on to it or not. Letting folks know that this is important for our city here in Worcester. I appreciate the leadership of my colleagues, you know, and you know, the folks who are very hesitant to do this in the Black and brown communities have good reason for it. And I think we should exhaust all of our resources. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you were good job on the second 5, and Council Corio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think now that we've opened up this conversation to really anything, I'm going to speak a little bit, and I'm going to ask the city manager a couple of questions on the rollout. So through the chair to the city manager, how many vaccines do we have in Worcester this week to distribute? What is the number on the rollout? I mean, how many vaccines do we have?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the council, there's a couple of answers to that. The city of Worcester, our EDS site that's housed at the senior center, gets the 975 per week. The city of Worcester gets more than that, in that some vaccines are provided to UMass, where next to the testing site at Mercantile Center, they're vaccinating some of their patients. St. Vincent's gets similar allocations where they're vaccinating their patients. There are, I just saw recently, several of our supermarkets and the pharmacies that have pharmacies are going to be rolling out vaccines there. A number of separate, smaller organizations have relationships with CVS and Walgreens that are having their populations, access the vaccine through contracts with those providers. And then, of course, we've just stood up the site at Worcester State, which will come online the beginning of next week. So it's hard to say specifically how many are coming into the community because they're coming into various locations, coming directly to the City of Worcester Department of Public Health. That's the 975 number.
So through the chair to the city manager, I have to tell you, as a daughter of two senior parents, age 83 and 89, I've had to use the online system, and it is horrific. It is awful, and I don't know how anybody can navigate it. It took me probably 5 days to find a vaccination for my parents, which is going to be in 3 weeks for the city. So my question to you is, talk about equity. It appears to me that there's not enough vaccinations for that 75 and older group at all. So we have a cohort of seniors that there's not even the vaccinations for that group right now. Never mind for the expanded 65, for the other communities at risk. Is that fair to say, to the chair through the city manager, are we not having the vaccinations sent to the city?
Mr. Manager?
So, I'm on a conference call every Wednesday morning. I'll be on tomorrow morning with the Lieutenant Governor, Secretary Sutters. There are 12 mayors and city managers that are part of that group where we talk about some of these issues. The whole state, as of last week, was receiving 100,000 vaccines a week. For the whole state of Massachusetts, 6.5 million people. Mm-hmm. So that is part of the challenge, the number of vaccines coming into the Commonwealth and then the distribution. What I've focused on, I appreciate the critiques, has been to try to set up as many sites as possible so when that flow of vaccines come into the community, Worcester residents will have maximum access. That's why we work so hard with Worcester State, St. Vincent's, Commonwealth Medicine to set up that site. When the vaccines start flowing into the community, they'll be able to do 2,000 plus vaccines a day, as well as what we're doing at the senior center. More pharmacies, pharmacies in places like Walmart and some of the supermarkets opening up, and then the hospital systems to get to our 75, ultimately our 65 and above folks with 2 or more complex medical conditions. And we have talked about, toward the end of the month, the state has said they're hoping that they could provide us vaccines, that Dr. Castile has been charged with working with Worcester Housing Authority to do clinics in all of the Housing Authority buildings throughout the city, as well as we're working with the VNA and others to get to the homebound seniors. So I appreciate areas where we're maybe not doing as much as we could, but our 3-person public health staff, nurses, and all the volunteers are literally working, round the clock, trying to take the vaccines we have and get them in as many arms as possible while we stand up additional sites around the city and coordinate to get into the neighborhoods, to make it easier for folks who are at Ascension Heights and people at 1050 and 1060 Main Street and Murray Ave apartments and all of the buildings across the city. That will help take some of the pressure off people who are competing for the limited number of appointments, either at the senior center or right now Gillette and ultimately at Worcester State University. So we are trying to create more opportunities, but that's all going to be dependent on more vaccines coming into the state to actually provide the necessary doses at these expanded locations.
So I have another question and then I have a comment. The comment is, I am very computer literate. And I just want people to know that don't be discouraged. You got to find ways to get on the computer and use the resources and make those appointments, whatever community you're from and whatever you're trying to achieve. Because I got frustrated logging on to Big Y, to CVS, Mercantile Center. I mean, it became hours of work because our doctor's office doesn't notify, and my parents did not get notified. At 89, you think he'd get notified. No, he didn't get notified. It took me spending hours online to get that. So that being said, I have another question, unrelated but related. We've heard there was some issue last week about vaccines being excess, that people didn't show up for their appointments. And is there a protocol involved with what happens with that vaccination? I don't know if I got it exactly right, but if it gets out of the refrigerator, out of the freezer, it can't be put back in, so it has to be used immediately. What is our protocol when we have those extra vaccines available?
So we have
the city manager. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the councilor. We have set up a waiting list system where folks who are in the eligible category, there, as of earlier today when I checked, there were 1,300 folks who are 75 and above who are on that waiting list. And you're right, every day we have appointments. Some people don't show up. Maybe it's the weather, they forget, whatever the case may be. There's some number of unused vaccines for that particular day. And then we call through that list, the wait list, and we get folks who can come down, usually on short notice. That's the nature of, the situation when you've got a vaccine that's been open, you need to use it within a certain period of time. But we go, the city of Worcester, and I want to make sure this is clear, has not wasted one dose. Not one dose of vaccine has been spoiled. We have found somebody to get that dose into, in the early days, it's a little more hectic and chaotic. Now that we have the wait list established, I think it's a much fairer and clearer process. And, we let folks know, hey, you may get a call and say, hey, there's a 2-hour window. Can you get down to the senior center and make it? And not everybody can, and they can stay on that wait list till they get a regular appointment. Or if they're able to get down there in short order, they might be able to get the vaccine that particular day. And again, it's not perfect. It doesn't always work for everyone. We know some people don't have rides, et cetera, but it is a way to ensure that no vaccines get wasted, which is really a top priority given how scarce the vaccine still is for us. We don't want to have any spoiled just because we didn't find an eligible person to give the vaccine to.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I still have one more question.
You're in your second 5 minutes, so.
I know, but we have people that are going to be talking twice, Mr. Mayor. Please allow.
You're in your second 5 minutes. You'll get there.
All right.
Get there for 5 minutes.
Mr. Manager, that sounds really great, and thank you so much for that information. What I need to know is, can you please give out the number now to get on that wait list, because people would love to be on that wait list and they have no way to find out how to get on that wait list. Is there a central number people call to get on that wait list if they're 75 and over?
So you can do it through the state website, which gives you, once you get in and you look for a appointment and you can't find an appointment that works for you, it gives you the option to go onto the wait list. And so that's one way that you could do it. There are also, the governor had announced this 211 system that is only for folks who are 75 and above, but that's another mechanism for folks who maybe are not as adept at the computer, but can go on there and find out a location or a time that works for them or their family member who might be helping them get to a location. So I do think each week and each day things are getting better as, more of these kind of systems get up and in place. And I realize, there's a lot of frustration. People are very anxious to get them, but I do think that each week we get a little closer to the kind of process that we're all looking for.
Thank you. I really do appreciate all that information. I think it's important that the people in the city know what to do and where to turn, because some of them are getting extremely discouraged, and I want them to know that if they want the vaccine, there is going to be opportunity for them to receive the vaccine. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Okay. Okay, so we have that, Councilor Rose?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we're being pretty flexible here in discussing the orders in front of us. And so I think that Councilor King, Councilor Rivera did a nice job, Councilor Rosen, of communicating a lot. So I'm not going to belabor that part of it. And I think Councilor Gloria referenced, you know, the frustration that residents are having currently. I think the governor gets on, he talks about, you know, this is how things are going to be rolled out. He's very calm and casual about it. People, you know, are energized by that. They get on and then they can't seem to figure things out. And it's becoming very, very frustrating. So I can appreciate the disparity conversation here. I can appreciate the frustration part of here. But I guess I just have a couple of questions to you, Mr. Chairman, to the city manager. And, you know, Councilor Wally and I had a neighborhood meeting yesterday where Karen Clark and Dr. Hirsch and, you know, we're on and communicating a lot. So I feel like I have a little bit of information, but I feel like, you know, the $1 million question here that's really confusing for people is, and again, I'm asking the manager this because he's on these calls and he's privy to a little bit more information, obviously, than most of us. But, you know, you have 100,000 vaccines, you have the 6.5 million people in the state of Massachusetts. Like, where did it break down in the distribution of the vaccines? And again, I hope I'm not asking you to speculate through the chair to the city manager, but like, I get emails and calls daily about like Massachusetts lagging behind, or there being a breakdown in Massachusetts compared to other states and so on. And we can talk about density and population and things like that. I'm just curious if there's any insight in and around where the breakdown is on that kind of higher level of distribution, in an effort to help share that information with people as well. And again, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot through the chair to the city manager. I think that this is really the $1 million question. I've said all along that history is going to reflect very well on the proactive things that we've done to address COVID with the leadership here. And I joke all the time that if they just let Worcester, you know, handle this stuff, the state would be in a better place. So again, I don't mean to put you on the spot through the chair to the manager, but like, where is this breaking down as it sort of travels to us, if you wouldn't mind?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the councilor, you know, some of it would just be speculation or things that I've heard, but I couldn't necessarily verify or vouch for myself. But certainly we've heard national conversations about the fact that there wasn't a lot of national planning done, that it was kind of left to the 50 states to come up with their own plans and strategies. And so Governor Baker formed a medical advisory committee to figure out who would be in the ranked order. And, you know, their guidance was that the first priority was to protect the health system. And so the folks who work in the healthcare front lines, the nurses, the doctors, you know, the folks who are giving the care to COVID patients would be the first to be vaccinated. I think that made eminent sense, especially if you looked at the numbers of healthcare workers who themselves were coming down with COVID or being exposed, that were taking them off the front lines at the time we were having surging numbers. That certainly made sense. The next was really to protect life. So they prioritized the most hard hit in terms of death, which were the seniors in our long-term care facilities, the folks who, you know, were kind of trapped in these facilities. The people coming and caring for them may have brought in, you know, exposure, asymptomatic, not realizing, and it goes like wildfire through these facilities. And we see everything from the soldiers' home in Holyoke to our own kind of a number of long-term care facilities. So that was the next priority. And, you know, much in line with the conversation tonight, there was this equity filter that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts wanted to bring into the discussion, which meant that, you know, there were populations that were identified for some of the earlier phases that may not have been in other states. And it's been controversial, like prisoners that, are in confined congregate settings. Not every state prioritized that. There are a lot of people who think that was the wrong priority. However, that was the lens in which the advisory panel advised the governor, and some of those kind of decisions were made. The next phase that we'll go into after we get through 75, 65, and the 2 or more medical complex conditions will be our essential workers category. And that really is where we're going to get into a lot of the folks that we're talking about here, those disproportionately impacted communities who, have not missed a beat working, in food processing facilities, retail, our own DPW workers, folks who are on the front lines delivering the essentials that allowed everybody else to stay home and safe while they all remained on the job and disproportionately were exposed. And we are very much intending on going out to those locations. We're trying to figure out who already is going to do that. Is Walmart going to vaccinate their own employees? They have a pharmacy in that location. We don't want to plan to go there if they're going to do that. TJ Maxx, which we've had a number of outbreaks there, folks who are working in the distribution center. So we are trying to survey folks and who has a relationship with a pharmacy provider or another entity that could do the vaccines on site, and where those gaps are, that's where we, along with our partners at UMass and the CareMobile, are looking to fill in and to go out and to try to make sure those vulnerable communities, get their opportunity to get the protection that the vaccine provides, that they're much in need of getting. So that's the best I can tell you. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's my understanding of how the priorities were developed and some of the challenges.
No, I certainly appreciate that response, and it certainly helps me convey and communicate to the constituents who are reaching out to us. I'd like to sign on to all these orders. I appreciate the advocacy of my colleagues here on all accounts. And, a couple quick things. I don't know where I am in terms of time, Mr. Chairman, but two quick things.
1 minute, a minute and 55 seconds.
Okay, so two quick things is we had a resident reach out to me whose father was on the wait list, and he was able to get there. He was the last person to show up to the senior center. They get there, he gets vaccinated, and I guess there's a tradition at the senior center that as soon as the last person is vaccinated, they use the last vaccine, that everyone gives a standing ovation. He showed this video to me and almost brought me to tears about the pride that the city has taken in and around making sure that every vaccine hits someone's arm who needs it. And so that was really, really special. And then last night we had our neighborhood meeting, and Dr. Hirsch, and the praise for him, and Dr. Castilla and Karen Clark and all these individuals who are working 18 hours a day, Nicole Valentine and so on, the list goes on, who basically asked the question of, if we were able to get, 2,000 vaccinations tomorrow, do we have the bandwidth to make that happen? For them to say, we have a massive volunteer group and community, but any amount of vaccines that we get, we're going to get the support, and we will have the increased energy to do whatever it is that we can to get it out to our constituents. So I just thought that was also special. These people who have overrun and have been overrun for almost a year now, saying and communicating with a lot of confidence that they'll do everything that they can should we get more vaccines available to us. So, I want to commend the city for that. I know that we have some advocacy. I know that we have some polls, and, this body, as evidenced by what was shared earlier, is going to continue to advocate to make sure that no one's lost in the shuffle here. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies for going over time.
You didn't go over. Okay, Councilor Russell.
Mr. Chairman, I just, first of all, I want to compliment our health department. I want to compliment the way that they've handled themselves locally, and the fact that they do have the bandwidth to get out the vaccines. But I think that, when you sit back and you listen to this conversation and you listen to what's going on, in the community overall, and you even listen to the TV, the other night, probably about a week ago, Lester Holt on NBC News had a map of the country, and he had 10 states highlighted, 10 states that didn't use 50% of their vaccines that they had to date. Massachusetts was one of those 10 states. You know, if a city councilor, my friend and colleague, Councilor Colorio, who was on a Zoom call, who was smart enough to advocate through these WebEx and Zoom things and everything else, is having that much difficulty to get an appointment for her family members, what makes us think that folks that don't have internet are going to get any easier? What makes us think that folks that can't afford these electronic services are going to have easier access? If we sit back and look at the report that came before the Health Committee that Councilor Rivera brought in with the folks from UMass, you know, you don't have to be Columbo to put this all together. There is a discrepancy, and it goes deeper than just the vaccine. It goes to internet access, it goes to wealth, it goes to just people trying to put food on their tables and making the choice to do that. And that's why it behooves us as a community to do what we can, because you know what? Some folks don't listen to Charlie Baker every afternoon at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock when he comes on. Some folks don't know there's a thing called 211. We need to bring this to this community, to the folks that are, like Councilor Rosen said, you know, dying at a higher rate. People that qualify already for these vaccines, but just don't know where to start. And maybe we need the Care Mobile. Maybe we need 10 Care Mobiles. Maybe we need to reach out into the community that far. Because, you know, it's very frustrating, Mr. Chairman. As a district councilor, I got a call from a resident the other day talking about how they were on the computer for I don't know how long, a husband and wife, you know, elderly couple in their 80s. One gets an appointment for 9 o'clock in the morning. The other one gets the appointment for 6 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, so they got to go wait in line twice. I mean, this just isn't working. I'm not blaming the administration, our manager, and our fine staff at the health department, and I'm not blaming anybody because it's been a trickle down from the federal government all the way down. But what we need to do as a community is just to listen to what's going on here. And if we listen to everything that's going on, it goes deeper, and that's why we have to do whatever we can to reach out and to go into these neighborhoods and into these different groups that are being affected by this and bring the message to them, because they're not getting the message, and some of them don't know where to start. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, are we all set then? Councilor Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Kennedy Carlson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So a couple of weeks ago, I had put an item on about transportation for bringing our seniors to get vaccinated. And I think if I recall, you talked about us having the ability to do that with Lyft. So I'm just curious, is that something that we're currently using at this time? And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you're the guy to answer this question, or does this go to the city manager? But I know that I specifically put an order on, and it was in regards to our seniors. And at that point, you had shared that we had the ability to transport them if need be. You know, go ahead.
No, that was something that was in the operation. They were planning that, so I'm not sure what it is, but I can get you an update on that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But I do want, you know, to say that this was something that we had talked about because it was a concern with the seniors. And I know for me, having a lot of, you know, senior housing in the district, it was about transportation for them, as well as transportation for some other folks. And in fact, I had put something on that could we potentially use the RTA as well to transport people who did need a ride to get vaccinated. So I think that we have raised this previously. if we look back, probably 2 weeks ago. So this isn't anything new to, to talk about. And I think that, personally, I think that the Commonwealth isn't giving us our share here in Worcester, Massachusetts. If you look at everybody that is, for me, that's calling, and I tell them call Gillette, they're getting in. They need a ride, and they're getting in. So I just, again, it's not anything to say that, we're not doing what we can with what we're given. But it just seems a little odd to me that you can't get in, but if I call and go on, and you can make appointments to get into Gillette for those who are eligible. So I think that, that in of itself is a little disturbing, but I believe I heard the manager talk about, because now with the 900 and I believe he said 975 that we get, along with now with the Worcester State that will open up on the 16th, and with some of the pharmacies opening up, I think it'll be a lot easier for people to have, to have access. But I know the manager's looking to speak, so I'm going to stop and let him speak, and I can finish when he's done.
Mr. Manager?
Well, I certainly didn't want to cut the counselor off. I just did want to make sure that when Councilor Russell said we need to reach out, I want folks to know that our senior center staff spent the end of last week calling seniors who go to the senior center on a regular basis, and hundreds of seniors who came in Friday and Saturday this week, and I was up there both days. They were called and solicited to come in and make appointments at the senior center, hundreds of our residents. That's how they found out about how to get her. They didn't have to surf the internet. We called them and connected them with that Worcester Senior Center site in order to try to get them. And as I mentioned, we don't have enough vaccines now. The state has told us hopefully by the end of the month, they will provide us with necessary amounts of vaccines so we can go to housing authority and senior buildings all across the city and do them in those buildings so our seniors don't have to travel. They don't have to have the exposure or deal with the elements that might be in the middle of winter, that we will come to their buildings, or in the case of a number of buildings, they've already made arrangements. And we've had our staff call every building in the city to find out, have you made an arrangement? When is that going to be done? Which buildings don't have arrangements? And we know certainly that Worcester Housing Authority, we're going to take the lead on that, and we're going to go out and do clinics in those buildings. So I don't want anybody to think that we've been passive in any way. We've used every tool at our disposal to get our seniors into our facility. We used every way to get the super site up at Worcester State and bring all the partners together. And now we're planning for going out into the neighborhoods, into the senior buildings, so that all the seniors don't have to come to us. We can go to as many of them as possible. And as I mentioned, working with the VNA for our homebound seniors. The complexity of that is mind-boggling because they have to be observed for 15 minutes in their location. So you can imagine how difficult it is to get somebody to go out, do that, watch them transport the vaccine, move on to the next location. But we are, and Dr. Castile's been taking the lead on that. So there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of intricacies to each of these. But I want folks to know, to the extent that we can get vaccines, we are creating systems to leave none of our seniors behind, and ultimately none of our community once we get to other phases of this rollout.
So through the chair to the manager, I'm not sure if you could answer this question, but the places like Mount Carmel Senior Housing and Seabury Heights, those folks there, they had folks go in and vaccinate them, and they were able to get vaccinated quicker than, for example, our housing authority properties. what was different with them versus somebody like the Housing Authority? Why were they able to get it quicker than the Housing Authority, the senior towers, for example? How did that? Yeah.
Yes, and I should be careful here because I don't know specifically. My understanding is some of these buildings, particularly some of the privately operated buildings, had relationships with the CVS's and the Walgreens that they could contract with to come and do the vaccines at those locations. Some, like the Worcester Housing Authority, didn't, and that's where the city is trying to step in. The same thing with some of our long-term care facilities. Some of them had the relationships with the CVS's and Walgreens, and in some cases we went out and gave vaccines. So again, that's part of the inefficiencies, if you will, of the system, where the federal government kind of left it up to the states. And what we're doing is trying to make sure that nobody gets left behind. Some have been very good about finding those connections with the private entities that have their own supplies from the federal government, and then some are more reliant on accessing the state's supply that they get from the federal government.
And Mr. Chairman, one last question through you to the manager. So these privately owned high-rises or housing for seniors, once they've been vaccinated, is there a way that we know that those folks have been vaccinated so that we're not trying to do the outreach in these communities that have already received the vaccine?
Unfortunately, the only way we know is, like, I've reassigned staff from all sorts of different departments. So Jana Turchak, our human rights person, I've had her calling through all these buildings, finding out, do you have a plan for your vaccines or don't you? Do we need to figure out how to get you a plan? And that's how we knew who had already made arrangements and who hadn't. So the state doesn't provide us with a list or a dashboard that kind of lays out who that is. But because we've been proactively trying to figure out who we need to account for and who's already taken care of, we have that ability now to look building by building and see who's already taking care of it, who we're going to have to step in and make sure we take care of.
One last question, Mr. Chairman. I know that the city had talked.
You're in your next 5 minutes.
Okay. You talked about, so right now we're in the phase where we're doing 75 and above. How much longer are we going to stay in that phase and move to the next phase that we're able to do the essential workers? How long before, and again, I know you can't say to me that it's going to be tomorrow or maybe Sunday, but is there a estimated time frame that you might have?
Yeah, and again, this is, as you mentioned, it's imprecise. The governor will make that decision when they think a sufficient number of the 75 and above. If I had to guess, somewhere toward the end of the month. And so we've been starting to try to think about, the 65 and above, the folks with 2 or more, complex medical conditions. I've had us surveying the city workforce. How many employees do we have that are 65 and above? How many employees identify as having 2 or more complex medical conditions? I've asked the superintendent to do the same thing with the Worcester Public Schools. I can tell you there's 275 employees on the school side that are over 65. We have 93 on our side that are over 65. We will try to put them through one of the clinics once that is eligible, and then we're doing a survey with employees on both sides, and then ultimately to the wider community. So the essential workers, which is our teachers, our early child care providers, DPW, the other food workers, et cetera, that will be in the next, the third step of phase 2. So again, if I had to guess, maybe early March, maybe the second week of March or so. Again, I think it'll go faster with the 65 and the 2 or more, because I think things like our Worcester State site will be online, more pharmacies, more, Walmarts and supermarkets will be online. So the access will be wider. So the pace hopefully will pick up as each subsequent step gets their chance to go and get the vaccine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Council King, you got 4 minutes, your second time. I can't hear you. Are you speaking? Or?
I'm trying. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, what I'm hearing is such a complex, overloaded list of responsibilities, duties, and navigation that the city is required to attend to. And, I also heard loud and clear that we don't have enough vaccines here in the city of Worcester. I would like to make a motion that this council is asking for advocacy from our delegation. I mentioned earlier, Brett Mahoney is the chair of public health, and that we also send that information that we are in need of more vaccines to Secretary of Health and Human Services, Mary Lou Sudders, Lieutenant Governor Polito, Governor Baker, and also the COVID-19 task force that Secretary Sudders oversees. What I'm also hearing is that perhaps, there's a need to really support our public health staff. And we really encourage the city manager to, if it's necessary, communicate to us. And it's not a question, it's just a comment, that if it's necessary, please feel free to communicate to us. We know there's a hiring freeze, but we need more nurses. You've mentioned 3 nurses. We need more nurses. We need more staff. Perhaps we need to tap in to money somewhere. So I hope that there's some due consideration to that. And also I wanted to thank my colleagues for all the things that they brought up. I heard a little bit about concerns of unused vaccines. I've heard about concerns about getting vaccines to people. And I just wanted to reiterate that the item being held by Councilor Bergman tonight also talks about the fact that these unused vaccines across the Commonwealth, that they're trying to get passed by 5 p.m. this Friday, will also provide more transparency regarding unused vaccine doses in the Commonwealth, an explanation for why they're unused, and a plan to redistribute those, maybe to the city of Worcester. And that this would be updated weekly. In addition to that, that one of the things they note that we should mention is that they talk about inequity as it relates to our elderly who may not have access to the internet or the ability to use it, technology inequity, internet inequity access, low-income families. In this bill, we should be supporting this bill and pushing it forward. And the direct delivery, they're talking about 30 vans who will 40 hours per week, 30 vans be deployed across the Commonwealth, maybe right here in the city of Worcester. They would have early hours, late nights, and weekend hours. We have what I heard tonight is that we have a tremendous amount of a heavy lift for the city, and we need to continue to advocate on a state level to bring those folks in, and they need to continually hear, not just the manager, not just the mayor. I know they're already doing that, but this council pushing as well for additional supports, because I quite frankly don't know how the administration's doing it, how Dr. Castillo's doing it, how our community partners are doing it. It's daunting, and we need support. And I really hope that motion to hold is withdrawn. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so Council Corey, you have 2 minutes left.
Thank you. I'll take that. I just was wondering if I could make a motion to, I'm trying to think of what we could do on this, because I'm trying to go on what my colleague, Councilor Russell, said about the information getting out. Is it possible through the chair to the city manager to do a public service announcement and explain people to call the 211 or to give the information out? I mean, must have some kind of demographics where we could put out 75 and older, and then also in addition, put that number, that 211, or any other information, keep it simple, that people can call. I think the more proactive we are in our level of communication, the better we'll be. And for some of those communities, as my colleagues have all mentioned, may not have the accessibility of watching Governor Baker every day, listening to the radio. They're hardworking people and they're just working all day, and they come home and they try to get on the internet and they can't. So is there anything possible through the chair to the city manager that we can do as a proactive measure through the council to get that information out immediately? Some kind of a, because I know we put out many robocalls when it comes to other things, like when it comes to storms. Can we use that same emergency system and put out a call to our seniors through the chair, to the manager?
Mr. Manager.
Through the chair to the councilor, we certainly can look at those options. I know the state is going to be having a communications plan as they try to roll out that asset and get the word out, but we can certainly look at what they're doing and how we can take it to the next level locally. I would just say I don't even know how many town halls that we've done. We've done them on every radio station in the city, Spanish speaking. We've done it with the Telegram and Gazette, Mass Live. Dr. Castile, myself, Dr. Hirsch, Karen Clark have been on Zoom meetings with Black Families Together, the Latino Educational Institute, anybody who will listen to us, the Muslim groups, anybody who will listen to us, we go on and we try to share information, resources, and we'll continue to do that and really try to get that word out. Council Russell had one with neighborhood groups up in his part of the city. Councilor Wally and Councilor Rose had one last night. And we try to bring those COVID messages out to any audience that will hear us. So we will continue to do that. And I think the idea about the reverse 911 is a good idea, and we certainly can see if we can do that quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we all set then? Okay. So I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank you and the public health, Dr. Hirsch, Dr. Maddie Castile, Karen Clark, and the whole staff. I was up there over the weekend too, and they're working overtime on their own time. They're up there on Saturday and Sundays working. A lot of them haven't had a day off since March and of last year. So and keeping up the good work. So, and while this is out of their hands, but they're doing the best they can do with what they have, and the managers lead them there, and I'm pretty proud of what they've done. So I just want to say thank you, Mr. Manager.
Just really quickly, I know we've gone long. I do want to say thank you to the superintendent and her staff. School nurses have supported our team of public health nurses. They've been amazing resources for us. School staff have been up there helping support. Their tech services folks sit with the seniors in their 15-minute observation period and help them book their second vaccine. They do it in multiple languages. The level of the city family coming together, volunteers, allied health students across our colleges and universities. This is an all hands on deck. The whole community has come together to do whatever they can. Retired doctors, nurses. We should be proud as a community for all the things that aren't quite going as quickly or as efficiently as we like. As you saw, Mr. Mayor, you go in there and you see a lot of really good, hardworking people, most of whom aren't being paid, and those who are being paid just a regular day, not any overtime, trying to do everything they can to get the vaccine to as many people as possible.
You're right. We honored the nurses last week at the school committee meeting, and so I think the IT department was up there over the weekend from the school department, and I want to thank them. And they were there for the whole both shifts, so did a great job. And just thank everybody. It's a community effort, and we'll get through this if working together. So thank you. And I was not surprised. We had people from all over the state volunteering, and great effort that was coordinating the volunteering here in the city of Worcester. We had nurses who just didn't work for the city of Worcester, who were just giving out the vaccines, who were volunteering their time, and other people too in the healthcare field. So I want to say thank you to all the volunteers who signed up on their own, not getting paid, but and really putting the time in. So thank you. We couldn't do it without you. Okay, so send that as amended, those items as amended with the other council's items to the manager.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Caloria,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Council Merrill Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera,
Yes.
Council Rose,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes, request to see manager, request chief provide increased traffic enforcement on Pleasant Street, north of New Square Rotary. Council Wally.
As it reads.
Okay, roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Caloria,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Council Merrill Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera,
Yes.
Council Rose,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request the manager work with the Commissioner of Public Works and Parks to establish a system communication of agenda items located on and other councils to track progress of said item. Council Clorio.
Thank you. Just briefly, this came out from my parking and traffic committee. A lot of times we approve of an item, it goes through the proper channels, it comes back to the city council, and then it gets voted on, and it says, yes, we will put a handicap parking space, yes, we will put a four-way stop, yes, we will put whatever. And then it gets lost. And then I get a message from my district councilors asking me about the item, and I say, yeah, it was voted on. And then I go back and I have to figure out where it was, what happened. So I did talk to the commissioner about this in my meeting with him, and he thought it was a great idea. It's just another level of communication. So when an item like a stop sign goes up, or, you know, through the process, that the district councilor and the chair of parking and traffic will be notified, so then we can get back to our people and say, yes, your sign should go up. I just got a call today. A woman's checking on her item from December. So the process of me going through it is pretty complicated. So to streamline this a little bit, maybe there's some kind of an email process or some kind of a way that we can use. I'm not sure of the program that they're using in the Department of Public Works, but maybe some way that we can be looped in to figure out when these items do get followed through on. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Wally, followed by Council Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an excellent order. I'd like to sign on as the former chair of the Traffic and Parking. I encountered the same thing. I had to create an Excel spreadsheet where I was tracking the improvements or orders that we approved and making sure that they were completed in a timely manner. So I'd like to sign on, and again, it's a good order. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Russell.
Mr. Chairman, I've asked multiple times through formal orders and just as part of the Public Works and part of the district council, I don't know why the councilors can't have access to the system where we can look up the item number. You know, whether it's a complaint about you know, something, some Public Works issue, or whether it's to see if there's a work order in. You know, we have to email Public Works staff has to look it up. Sometimes we have to call management and find out where it is. It would be so much easier if the councilors just had access to the work orders and to the complaint files that just to see what the status is. We could go on our tablets or our cell phones and just look it up, and that would probably eliminate half of the phone calls and half of the these items. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, okay, everybody wants to sign up about council. Everybody wants to sign on? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have Toomey and I guess King wants to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've actually expressed this as a former chair of traffic and parking myself, and also a former chair of public safety. In general, as a city councilor, a lot of times the orders that we file are difficult for us to research and go back, and so we end up calling the clerk's office and ask them to stop and do the searching. There is a system, I'm sure you're aware, I believe they still use it on the school committee, with numbers associated with the names in the order, which seem to make it easy to look up. So I don't know if we could work with them or collaborate or come up with a universal system for both sides, but it would be very helpful, not just for traffic and parking, but for all orders.
Okay, thank you. Councilor King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to sign on this as well and just offer a friendly amendment that perhaps we add maybe to also, in addition to the Commissioner of Public Works and Parks, to add perhaps the director or the office of, I think it's, what is it, Urban Technology Innovation or something to that. I think that's what it's called. Eric Batista's position, but perhaps we add that position or that office to the order as a friendly amendment. Councilor Calorio is open to that.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so send that to the manager as amended. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes, request manager work with the Public Works and Parks to erect a memorial Wetherall Park, also known as Peak Meadow, to Hester Newton and John Wetherall, gifted said land to the city. Council Calorio.
Not going to repeat what some of the call-in uses, which are very much more educated on the Wetherall Park, but after reading a lot about and looking into the history of the park itself, I think would only be the right thing to do if we can honor or, and it's more goes to my kind of teaching end of things, maybe to educate with the plaque and let people know how this land came to be, because it is a very fascinating story and has a lot of different angles to it. So I thought it was a great order. It came out of discussions with some of the folks down there at Wetherall Park. So I think it would be, while we're now in a time where we're looking at what's the next step for Duffy Field Wetherall Park, it would be one thing that maybe we can add to the project itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Send that to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request manager provide council to report the traffic study done relative to the Dory Memorial High School project. Council Calorio.
Thank you. One of the things, I've heard from my colleagues, Councilor Rose and Councilor Wally recently, is items on the agenda that have to do with around the Doherty High, Newton Square area. So I know there was a study done on Doherty Memorial High School on the traffic. I know it's very, very involved. I'd like that study to go to my committee. And if it seems like there's going to be a big interest, I can use it. I can just have it as a single item, and we could have a special meeting so we can get the people involved so they can really understand it, and we can invite some of the key people that did the study. I think that would help in future items when we're talking about, I know Council Wally put something on last week about, the Rotary. Maybe the Rotary needs to be looked at as we need to maybe do it over. All of us have been on that Rotary campaigning, and we know how incredibly busy that Rotary can be, especially during rush hour, and how dangerous it can be. So I'm thinking, let's look at the study as a committee. Then that way it can help us move forward with some of our agenda items to improve this Newton Square area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we send that to the manager. Councilor Rose, you want to talk on this?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't need to speak on this. Just wanted to sign on. This has come up a couple times, and I'm happy that it's here, and I look forward to having some transparency around it when it comes forward. Thank you.
Okay. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Mayor Petty. Yeah. 11M, request manager work with the city public safety departments and the superintendent of public schools to provide programs similar to the Career Pathways to Public Safety Program in partnership between the Rochester City School District and the City of Rochester to increase minority representation and local residency in the uniform divisions while increasing awareness of career opportunities within the public safety field. Councilor Toomey.
Mr. Chair, my husband had sent me an article from the Rochester Business Journal about a former police officer, Robert Junior Poles, and part of his awareness of it is Junior Poles played football for Boston College, so that's where that came from. But he is the coordinator, or was the coordinator for Career Pathways to Public Safety in the Rochester Public Schools, and is now preparing to launch the Poles Academy of Public Service, which will seek to train minority men and women to pursue careers in law enforcement. Robert Poles was a almost 22-year career police officer, and realized that part of the problem with having more men and women of color on the police force was that they weren't prepared for the job. They didn't understand the different aspects of the job, etc. So he worked with the school district to put together a very comprehensive program. So it's not just for the police department, it's Career Pathways to Public Safety program. And essentially, it's a program network of interrelated partnerships that strive to meet the needs of the community by providing youth residing in the city of Rochester, or here in the city of Worcester, with secondary and post-secondary opportunities to prepare them for a career in public safety. The program also provides resources to ensure student success, such as graduation from high school, college credit toward the pursuit of a post-secondary degree, work-based learning experiences, industry-based certifications, and potential employment opportunities, all of which prepare the youth to become productive citizens of the city of Rochester. The public safety program is a comprehensive 2-year career plan in their chosen pathway of public safety. The program is interfaced with stepping stones of achievement opportunities that motivate the students to maintain focus and discipline required to endure throughout the program and development stages. And also provide them the skills they need to meet the high demand for diverse and local residency candidates in public safety and emergency communication fields, as well as EMTs. So the 11th and 12th grade students from various high schools throughout the city travel to a center to participate in the program. It's a 36-week program for the 11th graders. And they have career awareness class that provides them the opportunity to explore various fields of public safety. 12th grade students are enrolled in the pathway of their choice in a career development class that provides them the opportunity to learn fundamentals of their chosen career pathway: criminal justice, firefighting, emergency medical, emergency communication. The curriculum is co-developed and co-delivered by certified industry experts and the school district professionals with backgrounds and years of experience in the field of public safety. The program, I've got report 4 years results from the program. In the firefighting and protection course, they had 4 students that are full-time Rochester firefighters. 8 students are currently in the fire academy. 9 students are currently in the trainee program for the Rochester Fire Department. In the police and security course, graduates, one is a security guard for the city of Rochester, and 5 students are employed by security agencies throughout the city. Emergency communications, they have 1 student currently employed by 911, and 3 students are currently waiting on the 911 civil service exam. EMTs, 1 student's employed with a rural metro class, and another one is in the career safety to public safety program. This is a well-done, well-researched, effective program. I have talked to the chief. I also spoke with, forwarded the information to to Paul Sear, who's the minority outreach person for the police department. I have not had a chance to talk to our 911 program, but this really falls right into our career pathways programming in the Worcester Public Schools. And it's really a great opportunity to be able to grow our own youth to have the jobs that we're talking about. We had a great deal of conversation about this earlier. And so I think that, and I know that the chief expressed, Chief Lavoie expressed great interest in this. I think that this is very doable. I think it's something that we can put together to be a very effective program for the future youth of Worcester. I also would like to also mention that I hope that we can recognize that not only do we need more young men and women of color, we also need diversity in language as well. Our city has almost 116 different languages spoken, and so this would be a great opportunity to educate people about the skill sets that they need to become successful in taking exams and tests, and also let them understand about the vast opportunities there are in all of these careers. So I don't know how many minutes I've taken, but
5 minutes and 13 seconds.
well, that's good. That wasn't bad. So I want to say thank you, and I hope my colleagues will support this. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity.
Thank you, Councilor Wally. Did you want to speak on this? Councilor King.
Just want to sign on, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councilor King, you want to sign on?
Yeah, I'd like to speak as well, Mr. Chairman, if that's
Councilor
okay.
King. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. One is, I just want to state that I want to be very clear that part of reimagining and enhancing public safety is about culture change. So, one of the things we learned as relates to diversity and inclusion is that when you bring in a diverse workforce, that there must be a culture and an environment where they feel supported, they feel valued, and respected. And, without that, you have retention issues. That's an issue statewide. That's an issue in all sorts of different state agencies, municipalities, et cetera. And I just wanted to state that it's not simply a matter of, and again, I'm not saying that Councilor Toomey is at all intimating that. I just want to state, that there's also a requirement of a culture change and an environment that's where folks will feel comfortable, valued, and respected, in addition to some other policy and regulation matters. So that being said, I have some concerns and questions about how to involve the public schools. And I'm quite confident that the school committee and the superintendent will kind of vet that and go through all of that. I'm going to support this item. I think it's important that this is another important step. But I just felt I need to make those additional comments publicly. And lastly, this summer, I filed a number of orders, and a number of my colleagues supported those orders as it relates to enhancing public safety. And what I was repeatedly told by my colleagues is that we should not, and we do not, and we traditionally don't, direct the manager to do anything. And as a consequence, folks forced reports. And I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to point it out. I support this. I'm not asking for a report. And I absolutely support requesting the manager to work with these folks towards this end. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm signing on.
Signing on? Okay. Okay. Anybody else want to sign on? Councilor Rose?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to sign on. I want to thank Councilor Toomey for putting this on. She certainly did her homework. 26,000 public school students here in Rochester, population in Rochester to the tune of about 205,000, which if you add our college kids in there, into our population, it all makes sense. The only difference there is that they have, a $200 and something odd $1 million budget compared to ours. Theirs is about 925,000 compared to our 717 or whatever it may be. So I'd like to sign on to this order, but I also want to be realistic about the costs or the resources that Rochester has compared to Worcester. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Corio, did you want to sign on? I'm sorry. Yep. Okay, so everybody wants to sign on. Good job, Councilor Toomey. Thank you, and roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request manager, Oakland City Solicitor to draft the language for potential rules, expansion rule to executive sessions, given the current virtual parameters and realities considered. Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's certainly a new frontier that we have embarked upon here across the city and the Commonwealth and in our private workspaces and in our homes as it relates to virtual working. And that also applies to our executive sessions. And, I'm hoping that we can actually put pen to paper and have some sort of new rules, as it were, for those actual sessions. So that, perhaps we need to go off screen, perhaps we recess, things of that nature. That's something that I think makes sense. But in addition to that, I'd like to also amend this to include that, we've been doing the virtual thing for quite some time. And I'd really like the administration and perhaps the clerk's department to look at how that's impacted participation. When you think about folks coming into City Hall, you think about folks who are able to call in, who may never have come to City Hall. How can we integrate this moving forward? What are the benefits of being able to call in remotely and virtually? Are we going to be able to do a portion of that if someone has a business trip, given the fact that we're not full-time here, and perhaps they are called out and want to participate? Are we able to do that? There's already some rules as it relates to remote participation. But I really like a report back on, what's the increased participation look like? I know we've had some interesting things as it relates to police reform that have heightened participation, or COVID that's heightened participation. But we have that as well if we were at City Hall. You have folks that kind of flood City Hall. But we really like that amended. And would love the opportunity to be sent that amendment portion to be sent, or all of it, to municipal operations and to really look at the rules and see if we can enhance our virtual participation and transparency for the councilors and the citizens alike. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll send both of those to MO for the report. Councilor Russell?
Mr. Chairman, I just wonder if it's worded properly, because in the past, the manager had nothing to do with rules of the council that I know of, that I remember.
That's why I just said we're going to send them both to the MO.
The MO committee worked with the law department.
Correct. That's why I sent to the MO just now, and Councilor King said send both to MO. So
thank you.
I just want to, Mr. Chairman, just want to clarify what's the issue with working.
The issue is that the rules committee creates the rules.
Right.
And so send them both to MO. The manager doesn't create the rules.
Oh, no, I understand that. But what I was looking for was the solicitor to work with us on the language.
Yeah, so I think you just need a committee meeting, then you can tell them what language you want, you can come back with it too.
I'd like some proposed language. I don't want to go to committee.
Well, then I'll amend it to include some. Okay, I'll amend it to include have the come back with some proposed language. I'll ask for an amendment, ask the city manager to come back with some prose or English regarding to, when we're on executive session, that the city councils be present on in the virtual meeting. If not, we will hold the meeting and until that person comes back and declares that there's nobody else into the room, and certify that that there's nobody else in the room. And also just ask that no cell phone devices be used. So I'll ask them to come back with that as amended. Okay, a roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes. Now request the manager by City Council for updates concerning the police reform related, or as they have been filed since the beginning of June 2020. Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just the administration, I know that there's been some work done on this, and I know folks are waiting for some proto to come forward. I know that there has been some movement on this, but really just asking for an update to the council on where we're at in the form of a report. So that's the ask. It's nothing more than that this time.
Okay. Thank you. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Next is 12A, that the Worcester City Council recognize February's Black History Month. We encourage all our city clerks and city council chief of staff to provide virtual resources that will allow city residents, families, students, and businesses to celebrate the achievements of African Americans, to recognize their efforts and make it a better community to all people. Councilor Rosen and Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Bergman and I co-sponsored this resolution before the last city council meeting, which had I guess the manager's calendar. We filed it probably, 10 days ago or 12 days ago. So we didn't get a chance to talk about it at the last meeting. However, I was glad at the last meeting that the mayor had a proclamation that recognized Black History Month, and that came from the mayor and the city council, all of us, and the administration, and that was a good way through his proclamation last week to recognize Black History Month and to celebrate it, and as I said in my order, to recognize the efforts of African Americans in making Worcester a better community for all people. And today, I think we got it maybe earlier too, but I know it was in the email today, we had a list from Walter Bird that Worcester celebrates Black History Month, and I have it in front of me. I'm not going to go through all the ways we celebrate it, but what an extensive list. I was so glad to see that the senior center's involved, the public library, and there's several projects and ways that folks can celebrate and recognize Black History Month in our local community. I had a different suggestion, and I know everyone's busy, especially our council chief of staff and certainly the city clerk, but I did suggest that they provide the public virtual resources, so online resources that will recognize and celebrate Black History Month and let folks know that we are grateful to our Black community and to businesses and schools and, different residents and families who, have traditionally recognized that month and supported us in that endeavor. So I would just ask for the council's blessing on that resolution, and if the city clerk can interact with our chief of staff, the city council chief of staff, maybe they can add to what the city is doing and has been doing virtually with some facts and figures that will provide information to our residents and our students. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Toomey.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to sign on. And could we also make sure that we have the minority business listing updated and available as well? I think it's really important that we support all members of our community. I know I've got a very good friend who has a small independent business. She doesn't have bricks and mortar, but does a fabulous job doing cakes and cake sculptures and things like that. And, you know, we all know someone that's doing a great job in creating things. So I think it's important that we support our friends and neighbors as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to sign on to that. Thank you.
Okay. I think we all sign on when we vote on this, so roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Next item is that the City Council, City of Worcester, does hereby support Representative Rebecca Roach and Senator James Diaz in act effectuating the COVID-19 vaccine bill. Councilor Bergman, did you want to hold this or? I can't, I'm sorry, Council.
Yes, I'd ask that it be held till the next meeting. You stand
Okay. 12C, that the, I think I lost everybody. Can you guys still? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
No, we can.
Okay. That the City Council, City of Worcester, does hereby support and recognize February 2021 as Black History Month in the City of Worcester. Further, that the City of Worcester Council believes Black Lives Matter. Further, that the City Council does hereby call upon the public officials, educators, librarians, and all the citizens to observe this month within appropriate ceremonies, activities, and programs that honor the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development. Further, the City Council commit itself not only to address the symbols of institutional racism, white supremacy, but also proactively identify and address issues, practices, policies, and institutional barriers that perpetuate injustice and inequality in our union schools and the community. Councilor King.
Mr. Chairman, do you usually read the resolution?
I usually just read the I don't have, I'm sorry, hang on. I don't think I have the resolution with me. I left it in the office. Do you have it?
I do have it.
Yeah, I usually read the resolution, as long as it's not like 6 pages, I usually.
No, it's this and this.
Okay. Go ahead.
Does Nico want to drop that for him? Can you share that document with him?
I'm not sure how we do that, so.
Nico?
Mr. Chairman, the actual resolution, Councilor King, do you have it in front of you?
I do.
I can try to share the screen unless you want to read it.
Sure, you can share the screen. And I'll read it, it's fine. I prefer if the mayor read it, because...
Okay, see if I can, let's see, this will be our first test to see if we can,
So if you bear with me for 1 second, I'll try to pull it up.
any luck, Nico, or we can have Council King read it if you can. There we go.
Are you able to say that?
Can you enlarge that, Nico, or make it a little bit bigger? Or?
Sure.
Okay. Whereas we celebrate Black History Month, we reflect on the many sacrifices and great contributions African-Americans have made to our country. And whereas through our history, African-Americans have courageously worn our nation's uniform while defending peace and liberty around the globe. And as President, there are more than 2 million Black veterans. And whereas African-American patriots broke down racial barriers and inspired our nation to make good on the promise of equal justice under the law, educators transform the academic world with the goal of ensuring that every child has access to good education. Athletics and entertainers have brought pride and joy to the generation of Americans. And whereas they accomplish every aspect of our society continues to encourage people to reach as far as the vision and dreams may take them. And whereas the brutalization and killing of Black persons, including queer and gender non-conforming persons, is a violation of human rights. Whereas the Black Lives Matter involvement has highlighted injustices and inequities that exist at the intersection of race, class, gender, which include but are not limited to mass incarceration, police brutality, poverty, discriminatory housing practice, economic disparity, homophobia, transphobia, gender inequality, poor access to healthcare and education outcomes. Whereas standing at the Black Lives Matter does not negate or committed to all members of our community, but rather elevates Black people. And whereas we believe that white allies in the community and others can help work towards social racial justice, and whereas police use excessive and militarized force, especially against Black people, is a human violation, and whereas the Worcester City Council believe no person should be discriminated against on the basis of age, creed, disability, ethnic background, gender identity or expression, marital status, national origin, political beliefs, race, religion, sexual orientation or size. And Black community members continue to experience microaggressions, racial profiling, hate instances, and racial bias in systems. And the Worcester City Council believes that not seeing color or being colorblind is detrimental to the advancing of justice. And whereas the City Council believes that white supremacy avoids the oppression of Black people and serves as a detriment to racial justice, and whereas Black ideals are respect for diversity, community, and freedom. And whereas this month is an important time to celebrate contributions that recognize the ethnic and racial diversity that strengthens and upholds our city. Now, therefore, be resolved, the City Council of the City of Worcester does hereby support and recognize February 2021 as Black History Month in the City of Worcester, and further that the Worcester Council believes that Black Lives Matter, and further the City Council does hereby call upon public officials, educators, librarians, all citizens to observe the month and appropriate ceremonies, activities, programs to honor the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, and spiritual and political development. And further, the Worcester Council commits itself not only to address the symbols of institutional racism and white supremacy, but also proactively identify, address the biases, practices, policies, institutional barriers that perpetuate injustice, inequality in our units, within our communities. Okay. We can take a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I speak on this, please?
It was 5 minutes to read, so you're in your second 5.
That's why I didn't read it, Mr. Chairman. So I just wanted to comment on this. Black History Month, given what we've been through as a country, as a community at large, and as members of the Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks.
Can I hold on, Council? Can I hold on one second? Nico, can you try to get Soraya Rivera back into the meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm actually working on that right now.
Okay, go ahead, Council.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. As I was saying, Black History Month, it takes on added significance given what we've been through in 2020. We continue to go through in 2021, particularly for Black, Brown, and Indigenous people of color here in our city and in America. The fact that we have the coronavirus here, we've had an unprecedented shutdown of the economy, and it's certainly exposed social and racial barriers that make it painfully unequal. This has been really a suspension and a cessation of what our normal is. You know, it also has given us a new lens to reconsider race, class, and our history, and it's a hard reality to ignore. It's really been a national reckoning. The denial of racial justice has once again become historic in many forms. You know, who is left behind is also often rooted in policies and practices, and there's an impact as it relates to decision making. And you know, people have asked people of color how they're doing. I can tell you that many of our black and brown elected officials, and I will certainly not speak for my colleagues on this council, but I've had discussions with all of them, and I can tell you that black folks, as it relates to black history and what we're talking about, it's been very daunting. It's been very heavy, and folks, when they ask how we're doing, don't understand how you suppress and push down so many things just to be able to function. And as a community, in a lot of ways, we're not doing well. You know, there's been unmet cries for humanity. And, you know, I think that as we move forward in the year, there's opportunities for healing. There's opportunities for reclaiming community. And I was on a call just today where they talked about the traumatic impact of what we've been going through as a country has on black, brown, and indigenous people here in the city. And, well, not in the city, but in general. And this was a well-known scientist named Dr. David Williams. He's out of Harvard. He's one of the recognized scientists on many levels that, on average, due to microaggressions and race-related trauma, that people in the BIPOC community lose on average 4.2 years of life over a lifespan due to these aggressions. There's real life consequences to the challenges that this community goes through. And this is an opportunity to really continue to build community, really look towards one another instead of past one another, set aside differences and continue to have difficult conversations, to continue to feel uncomfortable on both sides, on all sides. You know, and that's how we'll realize progress. You know, I always talk about how I'm a frontline social worker. We have some clinicians on the call. But social workers know intimately, as well as a lot of other folks, how racism can manifest in poverty, social inequities, schools, incarceration, real estate redlining, all those things, lower funding. And this is certainly a time where we can talk about that. And, you know, I use the term white supremacy today in this resolution. And I used it purposely because I had to educate myself as well, that white supremacy is not simply an issue of white nationalists, you know, folks feeling of white superiority. It's not simply that. What I've come to educate myself on, but that white supremacy is also, and I mentioned this before in a council meeting, it's also about who controls the politic, who controls the infrastructure, who controls the influence, who controls the policy, who controls the funding. You know, and I think, you know, folks have a visceral reaction to these sorts of issues as we work through it on a governmental level, on an interpersonal level. And I really would like to see us continue to educate ourselves. I know Councilor Rosen had put forward over the summer, perhaps us as a council availing ourselves of an opportunity for training and increased knowledge together. I hope we get the report back that he asked for so we can explore doing that. But, you know, I really would like to see us, you know, continue to fight. And we're not going to agree, but to continue to advocate to one another rather than past one another. And in addition to that, you know, I would like to make a separate motion that we ask the city manager to give back us a report on what exactly.
You're your second 5 minutes. If you got
I'm gonna be done in about 45 seconds, Mr. Chairman. I would like to file to make a motion that we ask the city manager to give us a report back on what it would look like. We have a new chief diversity officer to implement training on the history, causes, and solutions to the issue of white supremacy for all city employees, and that we also consider or have the city manager consider the establishment of a commission that perhaps includes this council, you know, to inquire from all communities of our city and all city departments to determine what is the state of white supremacy in the city of Worcester. And that report should also include recommendations to this council, because, you know, this is a day, and this is a time, this is a month where we think about how uncomfortable it's been to be part of the Black community historically. And even bringing forth this sort of item in these times is uncomfortable as well. But I really hope that we have a unanimous support of this resolution, and I hope there's support for those motions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So those motions will go on next week's calendar as being separate on the agenda. But Councilor Rose, before we go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I emphatically support this resolution. I emphatically support some of the thoughts and the awareness and the comments that Councilor King made as it relates to Black History Month. I will say and share personally that this year has been very trying and very difficult on the Black and Brown community. I think that since the murder of George Floyd, there has just been so much heaviness since we've seen the COVID disparities, since we've seen the increase in stress, financial stress, pandemic stress, and so on. And I think that there's a hypervigilance and a weight like bricks in a backpack that the Black and Brown community has been holding and facing for months and months and months. So I'm not going to suggest that any Black History Month is more or less important than any other, but I will say that the trying times and the community trauma, not just in the Black and Brown community, but the vulnerability that white allies and others have faced since the murder of George Floyd, and supporting, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement, and supporting all the recent initiatives and so on, has collectively been a weight and a challenge. And I think that when we think about, you know, Black History this month, I think that I hope that we can continue the process of being reflective and thoughtful and partnering and collaborating and advocating. And similar to our conversation earlier today in this meeting, where we're talking about just the holes in the COVID vaccine rollout and the implications of that, there are certainly holes in the rollout and implications in other areas. And I know that this body will continue to work together and advocate on behalf of making sure, like I said earlier, nobody gets left behind, and that we're proactively seeking, you know, opportunities for change. And so, like I said, I emphatically support this resolution. I think that there are a lot of great principles in here, and I hope that everyone will support this, and I hope that everyone will just take a collective breath in recognizing the weight and the heaviness that we've all faced since June. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. So we're going to do a roll call on that, on the resolution and the items. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria? Councilor Caloria? Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson? Councilmember Carlson?
I think we might have lost her. I don't think we're-
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey? Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, we're going to go to communications of city auditor. We'll refer the MO committee on a roll call on the audit report. Sent that to
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio? Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
yes. I refer the economic development committee on a roll call over the planning board. A roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio? Councilor King?
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes, items 15A, B, and C, 16A, and 17A. We refer those to the on a roll call. Adopt the roll call. Council, we're going to get to yours next. But,
No, Mr. Chair.
okay, go ahead, Council.
Did you say your ticket's 17A? Oh, no. I didn't quite hear you.
Yeah, I was going to take 17A. Okay, we'll skip to that one. Hang on, we'll just do 15A,
Yes, you
B.
take that separately, yeah.
Okay, 15A, B, and C, and 16A, correct.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio? Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey? Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes, 17A, that's a report of Committee on Public Safety. We're going to hold that, Council Toomey? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Council Toomey?
For you, Mr. Chair, I wanted to mention that we have a date for Citywide Crime Watch, February 22nd. I don't have the time yet, but it will be a virtual meeting. And I have not heard back yet on dates for the organizations that were mentioned by Sarai Rivera at the subcommittee meeting. So I'm hoping that they get their dates set up soon so that folks can have an opportunity, if they didn't get the chance to listen to the presentation, that they can listen to it at that meeting.
Okay, so we're going to hold that, Council? So,
yeah.
Okay.
Is that 17A, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to go to 18A. We're going to take away. We're going to do two votes on 18A and B, so separately, 18A, we're going to roll call.
This is just 18A, Mr. Chairman?
Correct, Council.
Mr. Chairman, I do apologize, but we have one of the councilors that dropped off that was calling me.
Okay, so we're on 18A.
Okay.
Roll call, accepting and adopting the roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Carlson?
Yes.
So because Councilmember Carlson's on the speakerphone, I would try, hopefully she can hear us, but Councilor Rivera,
Yep, yes.
Councilor Rose,
Yes.
Councilor Rosen,
Yes.
Councilor Russell,
Yes.
Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes, 18B, Councilor Russell.
Mr. Chairman, if I may address this item, the Public Works Committee meeting had the hearing on this item, and at the time, we heard no one call in to express any concern about it. This was an item where there was a confusion at more than one occasion between Brightwood Ave and Blythewood Ave, and a resident made the request to change the name of Brightwood Ave to Brightwood Street. The clerk's office sent notices out to all the residents, and we thought that it was okay with everyone. And then we found out that the notices arrived the day after the meeting. So at that time, I suggested to the clerk and to my colleagues that we should hold this item and send it back to Public Works. But in the meantime, the petitioner has asked to withdraw the item altogether. He said if some of the folks on the street are not, if everyone on the street isn't on board, he doesn't want to go further with it. So my motion with this item at this point would be to file it and not to go forward with it.
Okay, motion's to file, a roll call.
Councilor Bergman,
Yes.
Councilor Caloria,
Yes.
Councilor King,
Yes.
Councilor Carlson, Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Rose,
Yes.
Councilor Rosen,
Yes.
Councilor Russell,
Yes.
Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. We have reports of the Committee on Traffic. Let me see. 18C is going to be accepted and adopted on the roll call. 19A, 19E, advertised proposal ordinances on a roll call. And roll call.
Councilor Bergman,
Yes.
Councilor Caloria,
Yes.
Councilor King,
Yes.
Councilor Carlson, Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Rose,
Yes.
Councilor Rosen,
Yes.
Councilor Russell,
Yes.
Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes, 20A, communication draft of social media policy and procedures of the City Council, the event of the Facebook page of the City Council, creating including information relative to the best practices used in other communities. So I'm going to table that item. We'll do that on the roll call. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman?
It's non-debatable on this.
Okay.
So,
That's what I was going to ask.
yeah. Okay, roll call.
Councilor Bergman,
Yes.
Councilor Caloria,
Yes.
Councilor King,
No.
Councilor Carlson, Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Rose,
Yes.
Councilor Rosen,
Yes.
Councilor Russell,
Yes.
Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes, communication city manager, surveying information, communication road to the update on Columbus Park. And that one?
Yep.
You send that to Parks. Council King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to send this to Parks as well. Just a couple of comments here. I did go through this. Last time we discussed this, I had requested that the city manager hold off until the council completed this additional process with the additional orders. And also given the fact that we had some folks from the local community there to talk about it and who have opposed this. And also folks from the Lakeside community as well. And, you know, that failed, and they went forward. And on Monday, they approved the plan. And there's still, you know, exist some concerns here as it relates to eliminating the beach. And I will say, there's been a lot of work over at Codes. I want to commend the folks, Rick Rushton, Gary Rosen, Matt Wally, his council, the city manager, Parks Department, and more of all the work that's been done over at Codes. But one of the things that I'd requested, the information requested, was around the environmental justice neighborhood piece. And in this particular report, it references that it's the population, the environmental justice neighborhood isn't simply about, Lakeside, the Lakeside Housing Project, Worcester Housing Authority. But we also know that if the Lakeside Housing Authority wasn't there, it may not be a environmental justice neighborhood if those folks didn't live there. And we've heard a lot about the fire department and the concerns for safety, and we've had a number of drownings over the years. And I always point out we've had a number of drownings in other locations as well. But there's certainly been work on this. Councilor Wally has been meeting with folks and the manager back to 2019, I believe. So there's a lot of work that's gone on. They held some meetings with Lakeside, but there's some numbers in here that I look forward to discussing in committee. They're talking about $3.1 million in order to create a wall and drainage and other things as relates to being able to get vehicles there, an access road. And I don't know that those numbers are appropriate here. I don't know that we need that access road in order to do this. It also shares about how you can make it safe. There's some additional dollars there as well. And, I guess the question becomes, does the city think it's worth it? They're talking about, in order to counteract the drop-off, that we need to talk about $1.1 million for that. It talks about a recreational facility that I dispute is not needed for $1.3 million as an additional number. And as these numbers are thrown up against the wall, it really makes me think about a quote, a Nietzsche quote, and what it says is that you muddy the waters to make it seem deep. And I certainly think that these numbers can be looked at and they can be worked, and I think there's an opportunity here. But I also know that this council has little to no appetite for that. I also know that, and I agree, that public safety is paramount. And we have the I don't know if it's the Friends of Coles Pond. They were focusing on Belinda Beach. They focused on the Coles knife facility, and we have a great playground there. But I've been pretty clear about this, and we did have a unanimous vote on this quite some time ago. But I know I've had conversations where I've been made it very clear that there are opportunities in other ways. I had requested additional options. Some of my requests have not been provided, those reports. But at the end of the day, I can count votes. And I think that the folks that feel that this is a public safety matter feel that genuinely and feel that where they're at is the right way to go. I think that we should be restoring this beach, and I'd like to see this go to committee. And I'm very, very much disconcerted that our process wasn't allowed to continue to play through, and that approval from the Conservation Commission was sought, even though we have not had an opportunity to digest this and have a public comment process on the new information. But I certainly support this to go into committee, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so send that to committee. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes, so let's have an item under suspension, so the motion would be go into suspension, so roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Calorio,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Council Mark Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera, Council Rode,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes, I just have a item of suspension, which will go on the next calendar, and then the calendar after that. That the city council convene an executive session at the Tuesday, the March 2nd, 2021 meeting for the purpose of discussing litigation strategy with respect to the case of Worcester Interfaith versus the city of Worcester, United States District Court, civil number 4:21 CV 40015. So I'll set up a executive session for that for March 2nd. Roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Calorio,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Council Mark Carlson,
Yes.
I couldn't hear you. Say Rivera? Yes.
Council Rhodes,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes. So anybody else under suspension? Council King?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have two items to bring forward on the suspension that just came to my attention. One of which is an article in the TNG that included the N-word, included a lot of racially concerning facts, perhaps facts. And what I'd like a report back from the administration in regards to that article is a fact check. I understand that the media has been reporting some things as it relates to our police department and would like a fact check on that article. I was particularly, would like in the future, as we move forward, when items of this scale come forward, I would really appreciate some increased communication from the administration on these sorts of things. This particular item contributes to the increasing gap in trust in the community and in the Black community with the police department, if you accept what was in that article on its face. And that's my motion. The second motion I would have is as it relates, I've received correspondence from a number of individuals, including public safety employees here in the city of Worcester, that quite recently, 15 police officers perhaps had the blue flu as it relates to what's being reported as discipline that was meted out on a particular officer in response to allegations of misconduct as it relates to a client that was documented in the media who was being Section 12. So that came forward from multiple sources, and I'm not interested in getting into personnel matters because that's outside of our purview. But what I am interested in, as an elected, as a union official, is that I know that there is collective bargaining as it relates to wildcat strikes, as it relates to these sorts of what's alleged, and I again repeat, alleged to be a sick out, that there's collective bargaining language around that. I want to know what the request is for a report generally on what is the collective bargaining as it relates to the Worcester Police Department for these sorts of sick outs. Is it an unfair labor practice if it's found to be true? What is it? I'd really like to know what the language is. This has been throughout social media, and again, I've had first responders, public safety folks directly contact me and said that they've heard this allegations, and what they say are confirmations from members of the force themselves. So would really like a report back on what is the policy or collective bargaining language as it relates to all of this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With those reports, roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Calorio,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera,
Yes.
Council Rose,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes. So we're going back to 7A, that the city council convene in executive session on the Tuesday, February 9th, 2021 meeting for the purpose of discussing litigation strategy with respect to the case of Worcester versus the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, Spencer Tatum, Andrew Harris, Superior Court, number 15-1263-C, is the last item of business on the regular council meeting. The city council will not reconvene in open session. So we're going to close the meeting here and go into executive session. Will not reconvene in open session.
Mr. Chairman, do you have to file my item the order I filed asking for this executive session? Does that need to be filed?
No, I think I filed one, you filed one.
Oh, okay.
And so I filed it, and you filed it later, and I think.
Thank you.
And the court instructed me that this is the proper way to do this executive session. So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
it's not an order, it's more of a, it has its own character in the session. Roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Calorio,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera,
Yes.
Council Rose,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Can we have 5 minutes before we start? So I go back.
Yeah. Yeah, we will go for, think of, you guys will go, it is now 9:33, so about 9:40, we will get back together, okay? And everybody has I think everybody has a connection that was sent to you by the clerk's office in your emails for the executive session.